What you are about to see is the most thoroughly documented political cover-up in modern American history. Names, dates, witnesses, and records. It is all there. For 4 years, the most powerful people in Washington made a deliberate decision to hide the truth from you. And tonight, you are going to see every piece of it. Let us go back to March 19th, 2021. 2 months into his presidency, Joe Biden walked up the stairs of Air Force One. He tripped, then he tripped again, and then a third time. The cameras caught every stumble. The White House called it a windy day, but the signs had been there long before that moment. During the 2020 campaign, Biden's team made an unusual decision. Rather than hit the trail with the intensity of a presidential campaign, they kept him in his basement in Wilmington, Delaware. The strategy was framed as COVID caution, but people inside the campaign knew something else was being protected. By the summer of 2021, members of Congress on both sides of the aisle were noticing changes. Senator Chuck Grassley of Iowa requested information on Biden's cognitive evaluations. His staff received no meaningful response. Republicans on the House Oversight Committee formally asked questions about the president's health. Their requests were dismissed. Video after video was piling up. Biden appearing to freeze mid-sentence at a press conference, walking off stage while other world leaders were still present, losing his train of thought in the middle of an answer about inflation, then about immigration, then about foreign policy. Dr. Ronnie Jackson, who served as White House physician under 3 consecutive presidents, Barack Obama, Donald Trump, and briefly Joe Biden, began sounding alarms publicly in 2021. He said what many in Washington were only whispering. Something was seriously wrong, and the American people had a right to know. They were not being told. By 2022, a sophisticated system had developed inside the White House to manage what was becoming impossible to hide. Senior aides developed what insiders later described as a protective bubble. Press conferences became rare. Unscripted interactions with journalists were nearly eliminated. The teleprompter text was enlarged. Biden's public schedule was arranged so his appearances would fall in the mid-morning hours, when he was reportedly at his sharpest, rather than in the afternoon or evening. According to reporting by Bob Woodward and Robert Costa in their book War, senior White House officials were carefully selecting which foreign leaders received in-person meetings with Biden, and more importantly, which were quietly turned away. Not every meeting went well behind closed doors. Biden's physician, Dr. Kevin O'Connor, released annual health assessments declaring the president fit and vigorous. Doctors outside the White House were skeptical. No independent neurological evaluation was ever released to the public. Then in February 2024, the dam broke in an unexpected way. Special counsel Robert Hur released his report on Biden's handling of classified documents. Hur declined to recommend prosecution, but the reason he gave was devastating. He described Biden as, quote, a sympathetic, well-meaning elderly man with a poor memory, end quote. A man who, during interviews with investigators, could not remember when his own vice presidency ended and could not recall the year his son Beau died. The White House erupted. Press Secretary Karine Jean-Pierre called Hur's language gratuitous and politically motivated. Biden himself held an angry press conference to push back, and in doing so, accidentally called the president of Egypt the president of Mexico. The words poor memory were now on the record, said by a federal prosecutor in a formal legal document. And 4 months later, the entire country would see why those words were true. The question that millions of Americans started asking after the debate in June of 2024 was a simple one. Why did we not know sooner? The answer is uncomfortable, because the mainstream media, CNN, MSNBC, ABC News, the New York Times, the Washington Post, were not simply failing to cover the story. Many were actively helping to suppress it. Reporters who covered the White House regularly, who had seen Biden up close in private settings and in public settings, were talking to each other. They knew. But editors killed the stories. There was enormous internal pressure across major newsrooms not to run content that could embarrass the incumbent Democratic president in an election year. Alex Thompson, a senior reporter at Axios, spent 2 years building sources inside the Biden White House in the campaign. His reporting, based on dozens of first-hand accounts, painted a picture that was completely at odds with the official message coming out of the West Wing. A New York Times column by Maureen Dowd in 2024 compared Biden to King Lear, a once powerful leader losing his grip on power and reality. It was a devastating piece, and it was an exception, not the rule. For years, mainstream media organizations had made a political calculation. Joe Biden, whatever his limitations, was their best available option to keep Donald Trump out of the White House. And the truth about Biden's condition was a threat to that calculation. So they managed it. The American people were managed. After Biden withdrew from the 2024 race on July 21st, the people who had been forced into silence began to talk. Jake Tapper and Alex Thompson of CNN spent months conducting interviews for their book Original Sin, which became the definitive account of the cover-up. Their findings were staggering. According to their sources, senior Democratic Party aides and White House staff had been aware of Biden's serious cognitive decline as early as 2022. The decision to conceal it was not accidental. It was deliberate, coordinated, and reached the highest levels of the party infrastructure. First Lady Dr. Jill Biden and her team played a central role in controlling access to the president. They managed his schedule, determined who could meet with him and when, and pushed back hard against any internal discussion of the issue. Perhaps most striking of all, Kamala Harris, Biden's own vice president, was reportedly kept out of the inner circle of aides managing his condition. She was, like the rest of America, being managed rather than informed. House Republicans on the Judiciary and Oversight Committees subpoenaed records from the White House Medical Unit. The documents revealed a pattern of visits to neurological specialists that had never been disclosed to the public. Doctors whose names appeared on no official health report. Visits that happened with no public announcement and no explanation. The cover-up, when the full picture finally came into view, was far larger and far more deliberate than most Americans had imagined. So what do we do with all of this? The Biden health cover-up is not a partisan talking point. It is a documented story about what happens when people in power decide that they know better than the citizens who elected them. The staffers who managed the schedule, the party operatives who killed the stories, the media executives who chose narrative over truth, the physicians who wrote reports without releasing underlying data. These were not bad people acting alone. They were part of a system that decided the American voter could not be trusted with the truth. That is not democracy. That is exactly what the founders warned about when they wrote about the dangers of self-serving political establishments. Donald Trump won the 2024 presidential election by the largest electoral margin in a generation. Part of that victory was earned through years of fighting against a system that was determined to destroy him. But a significant part of that landslide was also a verdict from tens of millions of Americans who felt lied to, manipulated, and treated as pawns by the very institutions that were supposed to serve them. The cover-up of Joe Biden's health is a story that deserves to be remembered. Not because of partisan advantage, but because the next time the establishment tells you to ignore what your own eyes are seeing, you will know exactly what that playbook looks like. This is the kind of story that America First Daily exists to tell. The facts they try to bury, the names they do not want you to know, the truth the corporate press will not touch. If you believe Americans deserve to know what is really happening in their own government, hit that subscribe button right now. Share this video, talk about it, because the only way they win is if you stay silent. America first, always.